So I was a hardcore atheist for most of 30 years. Spent a lot of time talking people out of faith because statistically and psychologically it was ridiculous. It was all about me. Even family, even friends. It was about me. I was going to take care of myself, and once I took care of myself, I could take care of my family and my friends and everything else. I walked away from God when I was 12 or 13. I've put a lot of labels on that over the course of my life, but I think really what it was selfishness. So I walked away, and I walked away hard with a vision to pursue my identity and my life in a radically different direction. I think God made me obsessive compulsive for a reason, and I tried to be obsessive compulsive about physical pleasure, and I tried to be obsessive compulsive about education, and I tried to be obsessive compulsion about making a ton of money after I got out of school, and I was successful at all those things. But at the end of it, I was hollow. The next thing that happened was my financial world crashed. It was the most horrifying, powerless feeling you could ever imagine. I've got 3 people counting on me, and I've run our finances into the ground with no visible hope for how things were going to be. And I found myself sitting on my couch trying to figure out how I was going to keep my house, how I was going to pay my bills. It was really, really obvious to me that I wasn't in control anymore. I went away on a business trip for a week. I came back, I played golf on Saturday. And Sunday I woke up and I really wanted to hang with my family. I hadn't seen them for a week. But I was stuck because they were going to church. The only way I was going to spend time with my family is if I went to church with them. So I thought, well, what the heck? How bad can it be? I'll go and hang around with these guys at church. And here was a community, because it wasn't just the guy on the stage. It was the whole community offering a way of life that made sense, right? Offering a way of life that was impactful, not just on Sundays for an hour, but impactful as far as what I did with my life, how I treated the people around me. It gave me that identity that I had been searching for. And slowly the God piece kind of crept its way in. And then the next thing I knew, I really wanted to sing, man. I really wanted to sing and worship with these people, but I couldn't do it unless I really believed in God. And so I had, that was that next leverage point that God had with me. And so I decided, I believe, I'm going to start singing. And then my hand was in the air. I know that as long as I can continue to devote myself to church and to community and to humility and to following what God demonstrates to us in the Bible, that God will take care of the rest of that. You belong to Christ. He's paid for you, man. You're His, and He is yours. And that matters all day, every day, and impacts everything you do. What else could you ask for but a single point of purpose, a single passion, a single reason that impacts all of your life? The best part of saying yes to God is the response is a lot of times almost immediate, and it's real, and it's impactful, and it happens inside your heart. I can't tell you what's going to go on for you, but I can tell you that it's going to change the way your days move from the moment you get up, from the moment you go to bed, and it's available now.
Jim, as a once angry atheist, something about the Gospels struck you as being more than, and I quote you, moralistic mythologies. They actually appeared to be ancient eyewitness accounts, and that very fact became important to you. Why?
I think because when I first started, I was just interested in Jesus' words. So if it had been just a list like a Gospel of Thomas, a list of the quotes of Jesus, the kind of proverbial wisdom of Jesus, that would be one kind of document. But of course the Gospels aren't that at all. The Gospels appear to be recording a series of events that include Jesus' words, but they appear to be a historical account. And that's a very different proposal altogether. That means that if it is history, if it's a claim about something that actually happened, it means it's falsifiable. In other words, it's like my cold cases. I have people who will say, hey, I saw this is what happened, and they give me a narrative. Well, I can actually go in and take a look and see if that's reliable. Is that true? Did it actually happen? Is it falsifiable? And that gives me a point of context, a point of reference to begin an investigation. You'd have a hard time doing that if, for example, all we had was the Gospel of Thomas, a series of proverbial statements for the most part from Jesus. We'd have a really hard time even doing any kind of an historical investigation to see if it actually occurred. But these don't have that kind of contextual feeling. As I read through them, I saw they had properties that were similar to the properties of eyewitnesses when you have more than one witness to see in an event. When you have multiple eyewitness accounts, they have a certain characteristic, a certain flavor. And at first, as I read through these, I didn't really put my finger on what it was about them. I have in the book, but for me, just my gut instinct as an investigator said, wow, that's interesting. I've seen that before in a robbery. I've seen that before in a homicide account. So it just caused me to take the next step. I think we're blessed as Christians that we don't believe something that's not rooted in history. We believe something that had to actually occur. As Paul said, if the resurrection didn't actually occur in history, we're to be pitied. They're lying as eyewitnesses, he says. We're a lie. It's all a lie. And that's the beautiful thing about Christianity, is it's something you can actually investigate. I'm grateful for that, because as an investigator, that's exactly how I came to faith.
It was February of 1975. At that time, I was an alcoholic out of control. I was also using recreation drugs, but primarily alcohol was my drug of choice. And I totally was out of control. And I had a lot of friends in the entertainment business, and Hoyt Axton happened to be one of them, Ringo Starr and a bunch of people. And so they were having a TV special on the West Coast. And so Hoyt had called me and asked me if I would like to go or come out. And I told him, yeah, I would love to, because I knew there was going to be a lot of booze. I knew there was going to be partying. And while they were doing their special, I was doing my thing. And so after about 3 or 4 days out there, I became ill. And by ill, I mean I had a severe pain in my abdomen. I flew into Oklahoma City and called a senator friend of mine and told him I had to have a car because I was ill, I was sick. So they sent a car and they took me home, and I checked into the hospital at Wadley Hospital in Texarkana in February of 1975. I checked in with electrolytes, which means my potassium, my chlorides, and various chemicals were so far out of balance that they had to give me IVs to build me up. Now, at that time in my life, I was an atheist. I was a hardcore atheist and was living for myself. Atheists are self-centered, and they live for themselves. And this is where I found myself in 1975 in the hospital, and they took 3 days and then they operated me. And when they operated me, I found myself in intensive care. I woke up on a respirator, which means they were breathing for me. I couldn't speak, but I had been laying there in a coma, and I had heard these people talk about how sick I was and how I was going to die and how I wouldn't get out of the hospital. And at that time, my hair was very, very long, because I just wore my hair long. And I heard one guy say, his hair is long, and another guy said, not nearly as long as it's going to be before he gets out of here. And a third voice said, he's not going to get out of here, he's going to die. And after 3 days, I could breathe on my own. And I remember my doctor, my surgeon, a guy by the name of Donald Duncan, he told me, he says, Don, if you have anything to get right, if you have anything to get signed, you get it done, because we're not sure. We're not sure how long you have. So I knew, see, I had a condition that was called acute hemorrhagic necrotic pancreatitis. You don't live with this disease. Now, you can live with pancreatitis. You can even live with acute pancreatitis. But you do not live with acute hemorrhagic necrotic pancreatitis. Duncan had told my 2 sons that I would be dead before morning. They didn't expect me to survive. And, I'm laying there. Now, I'm a professed atheist. And when I say a professed atheist, I didn't believe in God. I believed in the power of the universe because I had seen it. I'd seen life and death. As a physician, I dealt with life and death. I believed in something, but don't talk to me about God, and surely don't talk to me about a resurrection or a virgin birth or this type of thing, because I am in research science. PhDs in research science, the majority of them do not believe in God. They do not believe in a supreme being. They believe, and they're beginning now to believe that there is order in the universe, because as we get farther and farther along, we see the order. But I was an atheist. Now see, it's very easy to be an atheist when you're successful. You have worked your way from Oklahoma welfare to being one of the most powerful men in your part of the country, one of the most powerful men in the state of Oklahoma in relationship to political. It's very easy to be an atheist. When you have done all of that, man can sit back and say, I don't need God. What is God? But it's very difficult to be an atheist when you're laying on your deathbed, because you begin to think, what if these people are right? See, there'd been one man by the name of Ron Short that has stood between me and the gates of hell. One man that had witnessed to me about the love of Jesus for 5 years before I became ill. One man. And, you know, I would debate him, and I liked him because he did what he said he was going to do. I mean, he was the only one that I saw that professed to be Christian, that lived what he said he was going to do. And so I really respected him. I didn't believe what he said, but I respected him. But when I'm laying on my deathbed and knowing that I'm going to die, guess who I thought about? I thought about, what if Ron is right? What if there is a heaven and a hell? And so the most immediately, the most pressing thought in my mind is, how do I get saved? What is saved? What is saved? How do I get saved? And so I sent them for Ron Short. I wanted him to come down because I wanted him to do what he had to do. I had no idea. How can a man hanging on a tree in Israel 2,000 years ago, what is that to me? But I knew that he had something that I had to have. And that night, see, I had him go for Ron, but Ron wasn't home. Ron was in Alabama. And so I had him go and send for Ron. And that night was the longest night that I've ever had in my entire life, before or since. And that night is, as I would be laying there in bed, as I'm laying there in bed, I would begin to fade away. I would begin to fade away, and as I would fade away, I would begin to go down. Now, it was like darkness. It was so dark. It was like the very darkness just penetrated into your very, very being. And as I left, and I can tell you I left my body, because I remember when I came back into my body. You know, I don't know where I was out of my body. Now, there are people that talk about a light. There are people that talk about floating above. There are people that talk about a feeling of warmth and love. I didn't feel any of that. I felt none of that. I felt untold terror. Untold terror. Because I knew that if I ever went all the way, if I slipped all the way, I would never get back. Now, in my beings of beings, I knew that. And so I fought all night long. They told me later on, I not only pulled the mattress cover off of the mattress, I pulled the mattress up on me because I had to stay. I had to wait. I had to wait till Ron got there. Whatever he had to do, I had to wait. But I would, again, and then I would leave, and I would be going down like a deep, deep, dark terror. Now, my skin began to get cold. Now, it's not like cold when you walk out into the air. It's like bone-chilling cold in my lower extremities. And you can feel the coldness begin to come up the legs. And again, I would begin to leave. Now, and I would be in that darkness, and I'd be in that void. And I remember one time entering back in my body, because when I entered my body, it was like, just like that. I felt my body thud. My physical body thud when I entered back in. Now, believe me, that is the most horrifying, terrifying experience that I've ever encountered. And I fought all night long. And the next morning, somewhere 9:30, 10 o'clock, in came Ron. And Ron came in and he says, Dr. Whitaker, what do they say is your chances? I said, Ron, they tell me I have none. He says, now's the time. And I said, you're right. I mean, I'd cursed him, I'd spit at him, but now was the time, because I had to have whatever he had, because I had a short period of time on earth, and I didn't have any idea when I might make that trip and go all the way. At that time, Ron led me simply in the sinner's prayer. Now, I had no idea what the sinner's prayer was, but I trusted Ron. But he led me in the sinner's prayer and told me that Jesus had died for my sins. He had died for the sins of the world. I didn't quite understand that, but I knew, he showed me in the Word of God where it said that. Now, you have to understand, I'm a man of books. I've spent a big part of my life, 25, 26 years of my life, in books, in all types of scientific books. Chemistry, like I said, degree in chemistry, advanced degrees, all the way out to the medicine doctor to practice medicine, all of these degrees. So he told me, and I believed him because it's in this book, and it was a new book unto me, and it was called the Bible. And so I let Ron lead me in the sinner's prayer, and I said the sinner's prayer after him. And I can tell you one thing. There was a peace that came over me like I had never known. I'd search for that peace. I'd search for it in the bottles, alcohol. I'd search for it in needles. I'd search for it in drugs. I'd search for it with women. I'd search for it all types of places. But there was no peace in my life. But once I accept Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, I was no longer afraid. I still believed I was going to die because I knew the condition I had is that you do not survive it. I knew that. I'm a physician. I knew what I had, you did not survive. And he shows me in the Word of God, it says, these signs shall follow those that believe. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover. I walk around on planet Earth this day, taking no insulin, taking no enzymes, eating whatsoever that I might, and God produces in my body every day the correct material for me to function without having to take medication. When you see blind eyes open, you see the cripples walk, you see the leopards cleansed, and you see them with your own eyes. You see that. Then it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that, the Bible is true. The prayer of faith, the prayer of salvation is not some just little prayer. It's the only way to the Father. And that's the only way. Now, all of these people that in the New Age movement that believe that everybody's going to heaven, that you can worship anything, you worship a flea, you can squeeze a tree, you can worship a crystal, you can worship a star. I got news for them. They're not going. Unless they accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, because the Word says the only way to the Father is through the Son.